I resented my sister for months without understanding why, until I realized the problem was never her. My mom turned our relationship into an obligation and nearly ruined it forever. There wasn't a fight. There wasn't a specific moment where everything exploded. If someone asked me when my resentment toward my sister began, I wouldn't be able to give an exact date. It's like when a crack appears in a wall, first it's invisible, then a thin line, and one day you realize it runs all the way through. My sister was always my favorite person. Her name is Valeria. She's 2 years younger than me, and throughout our entire childhood we were inseparable. Literally inseparable. We slept in the same bed even though we had separate rooms. We made up ridiculous stories, recorded stupid videos, and defended each other like the world was a common enemy. If someone bothered me at school, she showed up. If someone made her cry, I handled it. We were a team. Or at least, that's what I thought. Things started to change when I was 15. It wasn't sudden. It was more quiet. My mom had always been very present, but at that point her presence became something different. More intense. More controlling. More constant. And it started with small things. Take your sister with you, invite her along, don't leave her alone. At first, I didn't question it. It was normal, right? I was the older one. I was supposed to take care of her. But little by little, it stopped being occasional. It became a rule. If I went out with friends, I had to take her. If I went to someone's house, I had to include her. If I wanted time alone, that didn't exist. My mom dressed it up as something nice. She adores you. You're her role model. You two have always been close. And yeah, that was true. But something started to feel off. Because it was no longer something I chose. It was something forced on me, and that changes everything. I remember one night very clearly. I had planned to go out with some friends from school. Nothing special, just walking around, talking, maybe grabbing something cheap to eat. For the first time in weeks, I wanted to be alone. No responsibilities. No having to think about anyone else. I told my mom I was going out, and her response was immediate. Take your sister with you. She didn't even think about it. It was automatic. I said no. I think it was the first time I ever did, and the atmosphere changed. There wasn't yelling. There wasn't a direct punishment. It was worse. It was disappointment. That look that makes you feel like you've done something terrible without fully understanding what. Why not? Because I want to go out alone. Silence. Then came the phrase that, without me realizing it, started planting something inside me. How selfish. I didn't argue. I just stood there, feeling something inside me shrink. In the end, I took my sister. And it kept happening, over and over again. Every plan, every outing, every attempt to have my own space, it always ended the same way, with her there. And I want to make something clear. The problem wasn't her. It never was. She was never rude. She never imposed herself. In fact, a lot of the time she seemed uncomfortable. But still, she was there. Because our mom said so. And over time, my brain started doing something dangerous. It began to associate her with the loss of my freedom. Not in a logical way. In an emotional way. Every time I saw her getting ready to go out with me, something inside me tightened. Every time my mom said don't leave her, I felt like something was being taken from me. And without realizing it, I started to resent her. Not in an explosive way. In a slow way. Cold. Like an invisible layer that kept building up. I started talking to her less. Avoiding conversations. Not including her in things that used to feel natural. She noticed. Of course she noticed. But she never said anything. And that made it worse. Because there were moments when I'd catch her looking at me, like she was trying to understand what had changed. And I didn't know what to say. Because I didn't understand it myself. I just knew something didn't feel the same anymore. One afternoon, I got home after canceling plans because I didn't want to take her. She was in the living room, watching something on her phone. I said hi without much energy. And she answered with a small, almost shy smile. Didn't you go out? No, why? I didn't want to. Silence. Then she said something that annoyed me in that moment, but later I understood in a completely different way. You could have gone anyway. She didn't say it with reproach. She said it, like she was trying to help. But I was already in that mindset where you interpret everything the wrong way. Yeah, so they can force me to take you. I said it without thinking. It was quick, sharp, and the moment it left my mouth, I knew something wasn't right. She went still. She didn't respond right away. She just looked down. I don't force you. Her voice was soft. Too soft. And that irritated me even more. But you're always there. Again. Harsher. More unfair. She didn't say anything this time. She just nodded slightly. And went back to her phone. As if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. That night, I kept thinking about the conversation. I didn't feel guilty. That's the strangest part. I felt justified. Like I had finally said something I'd been holding in for a long time. And that's when I realized something unsettling. I didn't see her the same way anymore. I didn't see her as my teammate. I saw her as a burden. And that didn't make sense. Because she hadn't changed. What had changed was the dynamic. But I didn't understand that yet. I just felt. And what I felt was starting to turn into something darker. Something that was going to grow. Something that was going to break things that once felt unbreakable. And the worst part was that I still thought the problem was her. The most dangerous thing about resentment isn't when it explodes. It's when it becomes normal. When you stop questioning it. When you start acting based on it, without even realizing. That's exactly what happened to me. Over the next few weeks, my attitude toward Valeria changed in small ways, but constantly. I stopped telling her things. If she walked into my room, I'd get uncomfortable. If she tried to talk to me, my answers were short, cold, automatic. And the worst part, I started doing something I never would have done before. I began avoiding her on purpose. Before, if I was bored, I'd go look for her. Now, if I heard she was in the living room, I stayed in my room. If I knew she'd be in the kitchen, I waited. Like her presence was something I had to dodge. And she noticed. Of course she noticed. But she kept trying. That was the problem. She kept trying. One afternoon, she walked into my room without knocking. That already annoyed me. "What do you want?" I said it without looking up from my phone. A few seconds of silence. "I just wanted to see if you wanted to watch something with me." Before, that sentence would have been normal, even nice. But in that moment, it irritated me. No short, dry, final. She didn't leave right away. She stayed there, like she was hesitating. "It's a show you'd like," I sighed. Loud, exaggerated, like she was bothering me more than she actually was. "I told you no, Vale." I used that tone. "The one you know is going to hurt." Another pause. Longer. "Okay, just that. Okay." I heard her close the door. And for some reason, that sound stayed with me longer than it should have. But I didn't do anything. I didn't move. I didn't go after her. Nothing. And it kept going like that, day after day. Small moments. Small rejections. Small wounds. Until she stopped trying. And that was worse. Because the silence of someone who used to always be there weighs differently. The house started to feel strange. Quieter. More divided. There were no more spontaneous moments. No more laughter for no reason. It was like we lived in the same place, but in separate worlds. And my mom started to notice. Obviously. But the way she handled it only made everything worse. One night, we were having dinner. The three of us. In silence. That kind of silence that isn't comfortable. The kind that feels like someone's about to say something, but no one does. Until my mom spoke. "What's going on between you two?" No one answered. I kept eating. Valeria didn't even look up. "You weren't like this before." Her tone wasn't soft. It was tense. Like she already had a conclusion in her head. "Did you fight?" Again, silence. And then she did something I didn't expect. She pointed directly at me. "What's wrong with you?" It wasn't a real question. It was an accusation disguised as one. "There's nothing wrong with me." Automatic response. Defensive. "Of course there is. You're being weird with your sister." I felt that pressure again. That sensation of being watched. Judged. "I just want my space." There it was. I finally said it clearly. But instead of opening a conversation, it shut everything down. "Your sister is your family." As if that answered anything. "I know." "Then act like it." That was the moment something inside me hardened. Because she wasn't listening to me. She wasn't trying to understand. She was just imposing. Again. And without realizing it, my frustration shifted for a few seconds. But it went back to where it was easier. To Valeria. Because she was right there. Because she was constant. Because she was visible. I didn't do anything. Valeria's voice was quiet, but clear. We both looked at her. It was the first time in days she had spoken seriously. "I'm not doing anything." She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was just stating a fact. And instead of making me react, it made me more defensive. No one said you did anything, but the tone I used said the opposite. She looked at me, straight on, and for a second, I felt something uncomfortable, like she was seeing me in a way I didn't like. Not with anger, not with sadness, but with distance, like she didn't know who I was anymore. And that bothered me more than it should have. "Then stop acting like everything is my fault." Again. An unnecessary attack. Unfair. My mom stepped in. "That's enough." But she didn't say anything else. She didn't correct anything. She didn't clarify. She didn't protect. She just cut the conversation. And that was it. But it wasn't. Because that night marked a point. After that, Valeria stopped trying completely. She didn't knock on my door anymore. She didn't talk to me first. She didn't suggest anything. Nothing. It was like she had decided to disappear, without leaving. And for the first time, that made me uncomfortable. Not enough to change, but enough to feel something strange in my chest. Something I didn't know how to name. Something that wasn't anger. Wasn't annoyance. It was something else. But I still wasn't ready to understand it. Because accepting what was really happening was going to mean accepting something far more uncomfortable. That maybe. The problem had never been her. There are moments that don't seem important while they're happening. But later, you remember them with absurd clarity. As if your mind decided to record them in high definition. That day was one of those. It was Saturday. My mom had to be out all day for work, which was rare because she was almost always at home. Before leaving, she did what she always did. She gave us instructions. But this time, they were longer than usual. "Take care of your sister. Eat on time. Don't go out. And keep an eye on her." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a list of orders. I nodded without much enthusiasm. Valeria didn't say anything. She was just there, like she was already used to that kind of goodbye. The door closed. Silence. A different kind of silence. Not tense. Not uncomfortable. Just empty. For the first time in a long time, we were alone. No supervision. No constant pressure floating in the air. I went straight to my room. Automatic. Like always. But this time, something was different. There was no expectation, no obligation, no one waiting for me to do something, and that felt strange. About 20 minutes passed. I was on my phone, not really doing much, until I heard something. Laughter. From the living room. I frowned. That wasn't common. I stepped out, a little curious, and there she was. Valeria was on the couch, with headphones on, watching something on her phone, laughing by herself. But it wasn't a forced laugh. It was genuine, light, like before, like when we were kids. I stood there for a few seconds, watching, without her noticing me, and for some reason, that threw me off. Because she wasn't sad, she wasn't waiting, she wasn't trying to talk to me, she was just, okay, without me. I went back to my room, but something stayed circling in my head, an uncomfortable thought. If she could be like that, without me, then, why was she always with me before? I tried to ignore it. It didn't work. After a while, I went out again. No plan. I just went. I walked into the kitchen, got some water. She was still in the living room. This time she saw me. She took off one headphone. Do you want to watch this? The question was calm. No pressure. No expectation. Very different from before. And that's when something important happened. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel annoyed. I didn't feel that automatic rejection. Because she wasn't being forced. She wasn't there because she had to be. She was just inviting me. And that changed everything. I don't know, what's it about? I sat on the couch next to her. Not too close, but not far either. Small step. It's a mystery series, I think you'd like it. She showed me the screen, and we started watching, without talking much, without tension, without that strange weight in the air, just normal. And as the minutes passed, something started to click in my head. A piece that had been out of place for months started to fit. Because sitting there with her, without anyone forcing us, I wasn't bothered. I wasn't uncomfortable. I didn't see her as a burden. I saw her, the way I had always seen her, as my sister, as my person. And that hit me hard, because then, everything from before didn't make sense. Or it did, but not in the way I thought. The whole scene shifted in my mind. Every time my mom said, "Take her with you," every time I felt like something was being taken from me, every time I associated that feeling with her, all of that didn't come from her. It came from what she represented in that context. Obligation, control, lack of choice. And I had been pointing at the wrong place this whole time. I glanced at her. She was focused on the show, calm, unaware of what was going on in my head, and I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Guilt, but not a light kind of guilt. The kind that sits in your chest and doesn't move. Because suddenly, everything I had done looked different. Every sharp reply, every time I ignored her, every moment I made her feel like a nuisance. She hadn't been the problem. Not once. I had turned her presence into something negative, because someone else had turned our relationship into an obligation. And the worst part is that she had been trapped in that too. Unable to do anything, unable to choose, just like me, but taking all the impact. The show kept playing, but I wasn't watching anymore. I was rebuilding entire months in my head, from a different angle. One I didn't like, one that made me look bad, because it meant accepting something difficult. Not just that I was wrong, but that I had been unfair. To the person who least deserved it. Do you like it? Valeria's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I nodded. Yeah, it's good. And it was true, but not because of the show, because of the moment, because of what it represented, because of what it was showing me, that when there was no pressure, we worked, like we always had. And that's when I understood something else. Something that hurt even more than the guilt. If I didn't do something, if I let everything keep going the same way, I wouldn't just lose awkward moments. I would lose her. For real. Because she had already started to pull away. And this time, she wasn't going to try to come back. Understanding something doesn't fix it. That was the first thing I learned. Because that same afternoon, after watching the show with Valeria, I was left with that heavy feeling in my chest, like my mind had woken up, but everything else was still lagging behind. I wanted to say something. That much was clear. But I didn't know how. Because it wasn't a simple sorry. It wasn't about one specific thing. It was about weeks, months, of small things that, together, had caused damage. And that's not easy to sum up. An hour passed. 2. Night started to fall. My mom still wasn't home, and I kept going in circles. Meanwhile, Valeria was in her room. Door half closed. Lights on. Silence. That kind of silence that wasn't normal anymore, but also wasn't new. I stood in front of her door twice. Both times, I didn't knock. Ridiculous. I had been able to treat her badly without thinking, but I couldn't say hey without feeling like I'd mess it up. The third time, I knocked. Softly. Yeah? Her voice was neutral. That hit me more than I expected. I opened the door a little. Can I come in? Before, I wouldn't have even asked. Now, it felt necessary. Yeah. I walked in. She was sitting on her bed, phone in her hand. She set it aside when she saw me. Waiting. No smile. No tension. Just waiting. And that forced me to speak. Because there was nothing to distract me. Nothing to avoid the moment. I sat on the edge of the bed. A bit far. That distance again, except this time it felt real. I wanted to talk to you. She nodded. Okay. I took a breath. And that's when I realized something important. If I tried to soften it, it would come out wrong. So I said it straight. I've been acting weird with you. No reaction. She just listened. And, I know I've treated you badly. Pause. And it's not because of you. That's when she looked up a little. Not surprised. More like, interested. Like she wanted to understand. Then why? The question was calm, but heavy. Because it was exactly what I hadn't been able to answer for months. And now, I had to. Because, I felt like I didn't have a choice. Silence. Every time I wanted to do something, I had to include you. Not because I wanted to, but because I was forced to. I swallowed. And I started to associate you with that. That's when her expression shifted slightly. Not to anger. To something more complex. Like she was processing it. But that's not your fault. I said it quickly. Like I was trying to fix everything at once. I know that now, but before, I didn't see it that way. I looked down, and I ended up treating you like it was. The room stayed quiet for a few seconds. Not uncomfortable, but heavy. She didn't respond right away, and that made me nervous, because I didn't know what to expect. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Something to wrap it up quickly, but it wasn't like that. Yeah, you did. Her voice was soft, but direct. No sugarcoating, and that hurt, because it was true, and she wasn't minimizing it. She wasn't dressing it up. She was saying it as it was. I looked up. She wasn't angry, but she wasn't fine either. I thought you didn't want to be around me anymore. That sentence felt like a clean hit. No exaggeration. No drama. Just honest. And I tried not to bother you. That's when something inside me broke a little. Because that explained everything. Why she stopped trying. Why she stopped talking. Why she disappeared, without leaving. It wasn't indifference. It was protection. She was protecting herself from me. I'm sorry. This time it wasn't planned. It just came out. Really, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't enough. And she knew it too. She nodded slightly. Not as acceptance. More like, acknowledgement. It's okay. But it didn't sound like everything's okay. It sounded like I hear you. And that was different. Very different. I stayed there a few more seconds, not knowing what else to say, because there wasn't a magic sentence. There wasn't something that would close everything. I just wanted you to know. She nodded again. Thanks for telling me. And that's when I understood something else. This wasn't going to be fixed in one conversation. It wasn't going to reset everything. What broke was going to take time, actions, consistency, and probably patience from her, more than I deserved. I stood up, walked to the door, and before leaving, I looked at her again. If you want, we can watch another episode tomorrow. It wasn't a big offer, but it was something. An attempt, a choice. This time, a real one. She hesitated for a second, then nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. Small, but important. I left the room, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like something had changed. Not fixed, but shifted. Like the crack wasn't growing anymore, but there was still something left. Something bigger. Because even though I understood everything now, the root of the problem was still there. And sooner or later, I was going to have to face it. There are conversations you know are going to be uncomfortable before they even begin. This was one of those. Not because my mom was an aggressive person, but because she was firm. The kind of person who believes she's right because things have always worked that way. And questioning that isn't easy. A couple of days passed after I talked to Valeria. Calm days. Strangely calm. We watched another episode. Then another. We didn't talk about what happened again, but something had changed. It was subtle, but real. There was less distance. Less tension, like we were rebuilding something, without saying it out loud. But while that was getting better, something else stayed the same. My mom. The phrases hadn't changed. Take your sister with you. Don't leave her. You two always together. And now, every time she said it, I wasn't confused anymore. It irritated me, because now I understood the problem, and I wasn't willing to go back to the same place. The conversation happened on an ordinary night. Nothing special. That's what made it more real. We were in the kitchen, just my mom and me. Valeria was in her room. I'm going out tomorrow with some friends. I said it normally. No tension. No build-up. Okay, pause. And then, as expected, take your sister with you. There it was. The same phrase. The same tone. The same dynamic as always. But this time, I wasn't going to respond the same way. No silence. It wasn't an aggressive no, but it was firm. Different. My mom stopped what she was doing. She looked at me. That look. The same as before. But this time, I didn't shrink. What do you mean no? I want to go out alone. Pause. Longer. Heavier. And why can't you take her? There was the key question. The one I hadn't known how to answer before. Now I did. Because I want to choose. Silence. You could tell she didn't expect that. You've always gone out together. Not always. I corrected her. Lately, yes, but not because we want to. That changed the atmosphere. It became more tense. More direct. What do you mean by that? I took a breath. Because this was the point. The moment where I could say it clearly, or back down. I don't like it being an obligation. There it was. Hanging in the air. No decoration. No softening. My mom frowned. It's not an obligation, she's your sister. The same logic as always. Circular. Closed. Exactly. I looked at her directly. She's my sister. Not a constant responsibility. Silence. That, she didn't like. You could tell. Taking care of her is your responsibility. Taking care of her when it's necessary, yes, I replied without raising my voice. But not all the time. Not in everything I do. Pause. I could see her processing it, but she wasn't giving in. She was defending her position. She needs you. That phrase was interesting, because for the first time, it didn't sound like an order. It sounded like a belief, like something she truly thought, and that made me respond differently. No, her expression changed. She doesn't need me like that. She can be fine on her own. She can do her own things. She can choose too. Each sentence was something I had only understood a few days ago, and now I was saying it out loud. My mom shook her head. You don't understand. That's when I knew this was going to escalate a bit more. Then explain it to me. She crossed her arms. You two have always been close. That's a good thing. That needs to be maintained. And there it was. The origin. It wasn't control for the sake of control. It was fear that something might break, and her way of preventing it had been to force it. But not like that. I said it more gently. Not as an attack. As an explanation. When you force it, it stops being real. Silence. That line made her think. I could tell. Because she didn't respond right away. It turns into something you do because you have to, not because you want to. I softened my tone a bit, and that is what happened. I didn't say everything. I didn't tell her every moment, every comment, but I didn't need to. The idea was there. Complete. My mom looked away, thinking, processing, and then she said something I didn't expect. I just wanted you two not to drift apart. There it was. The emotional root. It wasn't cold control. It was fear. And that changed the conversation, because I wasn't arguing against a rule anymore. I was talking to a person trying to do the right thing, the wrong way. I know, and I meant it, but it almost did the opposite. That made her look at me again. How? Pause. And then, I decided to say it fully. I was starting to pull away from her. Silence. Heavy. Real. Because I felt like I had no space, and I started to see her as a burden. I didn't soften that part, because she needed to understand it. My mom went still, processing that. For real. She wasn't defensive anymore. She was listening, but it wasn't because of her. I added. It was because of what everything turned into. The kitchen went quiet, but it wasn't tense anymore. It was reflective, different, and that's when I understood something else. Relationships don't break only because of conflict. Sometimes they wear down because of good intentions executed the wrong way. My mom sighed. So, what are you suggesting? That question was new. It wasn't an imposition. It was openness, and that changed everything. That you let us choose. Simple, clear. If we want to go out together, it's because we want to, and if we don't, that's okay too. Pause. It doesn't mean I don't love her, it means I want it to be real. My mom didn't respond right away, but she nodded, slowly, like someone who isn't 100% convinced, but understands. I'll try. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't an immediate change, but it was enough. For now. Because this doesn't get fixed in a day, but it can start in one. People think that when you fix something, everything goes back to how it was before. It doesn't work like that, especially not in relationships that were close to breaking. What actually happens is stranger, slower, more honest. After that conversation with my mom, things didn't change overnight. There wasn't an okay, everything's solved. There were attempts, small ones, sometimes clumsy, but different. The first test came quickly. A couple of days later, I told my mom I was going out. Automatically, she went quiet, like her brain was searching for the usual line. Take your sister with you, but she didn't say it. You could tell she wanted to. You could tell it was right there, ready to come out. But it didn't. Instead, she said, okay, be careful. And that was it. Nothing else. It might seem like nothing, but in that moment, it was huge. Because for the first time, she was following through on what she said. She was trying. I went out that day without that pressure on me, without that invisible weight. And the funny thing is, for the first time in a long time, I thought about inviting Valeria. Not because I had to, because I wanted to, and that was completely different. I didn't do it that day, but the fact that the thought felt natural was already a sign. Meanwhile, with Valeria, things started rebuilding the way you put something back together after it falls to the ground. You don't rush it. You go piece by piece, carefully. At first, it was just short moments, watching a show, eating together, simple conversations, nothing deep, nothing forced, but consistent, and that started to change the atmosphere. The house no longer felt divided. It wasn't that place where we avoided crossing paths. There was more air, more space, and inside that space, interesting things started to happen. One day, I was in my room, door open, something that hadn't happened in months. Valeria walked down the hallway. She stopped, looked at me. I'm going out with some friends. I nodded. Okay, pause. Then she added, if you want, we can watch the next episode another day. It wasn't an urgent invitation. It wasn't a forced attempt to reconnect. It was an option, and that made it valuable. Yeah, sounds good. I smiled a little. She did too. Small moment, but real. Another day, it was me. I was going out with some friends, and before I left, I stopped by the living room. She was there. Hey, I'm heading out. Okay. I paused for a second. Thought about it. Then I said it. If you want, you can come another day. Not as an obligation. Not as a habit. As an invitation. She raised an eyebrow, a little surprised. Are you sure? Yeah. Pause. Then she smiled a bit. All right, we didn't go that day. But it didn't matter. Because that wasn't the point. The point was that now, we could choose. And when you choose, things carry a different weight. They feel different. They become yours again. With my mom, the change was slower. There were days when she almost slipped back into the same patterns. Half-formed phrases, comments that lingered in the air. But she stopped herself. Corrected herself. And that mattered more than getting it perfect. Because it meant she was aware that it wasn't automatic anymore. And little by little, the dynamic stopped being a rule and became a relationship. A real one. One where everyone had space. Where being together was a choice, not an obligation. And that did something interesting. It brought us closer than before. But in a different way. We weren't those inseparable kids who did everything together anymore. We were two people who could be apart, without losing the connection. And that is much stronger. Much harder to break. One day, months later, we were watching a movie. Nothing special. Just a random Friday. Valeria was lying on the couch. I was on the other side. And at one random moment, she laughed. The kind you can't control. Automatic. And without thinking, I laughed too. Not because of the movie. Because of the moment. Because of how familiar it felt. Because it felt like us. I looked at her. She looked at me. And there was a second where neither of us said anything. But we didn't need to. Because we both knew. We had been so close to losing that. So close to becoming two people who just share a house, but not a life. And all of it, over something neither of us chose. That night, when I went to my room, I thought about something I hadn't understood before. The problem was never the love. It was always there. What failed was the way we were forced to show it. Because love, when it's imposed, it gets distorted. It becomes heavy. It gets confused. It wears down. But when you choose it, even after it's been damaged a little, it can come back. Different. More conscious. More real. And yeah, we never went back to how things were before. But honestly, that's a good thing. Because what we have now doesn't depend on anyone else. Not on rules. Not on expectations. Just on us. And that is much harder to break.